Okay, I'm going to start if you're ready.
I'm ready here. I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to welcome you out this evening, September 3rd, 2020, to the special meeting of the Planning Commission. A roll call, please.
Chairman Cox.
Here.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Here.
Commissioner Ferris.
Here.
Commissioner Hayman. Here. 4 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please join me in saluting the flag of the greatest nation in this world. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman. Aye. 4 ayes. Motion carries.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 26th and June 11th?
May 26th, I want one small correction because I'm a little bit picky. So, under the discussion and other action items, it says for track twice, so I just want that to be corrected.
Where's that located, Solomon?
It's on page 2.
Okay.
You got that, Heather?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Under tentative track map 6775 extension, consideration for it. Got that right?
Uh-huh.
For a track with 77. Or am I reading that wrong?
Oh, you're saying because it says double track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other corrections or omissions? Do I have a motion to approve with that correction?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman. Aye. 4 ayes. Motion carries.
Thank you. We come to the public comments section of the agenda. Persons wishing to address the Commission on matters that are within the Commission's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. We'll now open up the public comment at 5:03. Any callers?
This is Kelly from Encore Image.
Okay, we're aware that you're here, Kelly. This is just if you have a public
Okay,
comment
sorry.
that you would like to make.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment section at 5:04. Moving on, we will reopen the public hearing A continued item, conditional use permit 20-02, an application for a new electronic community messaging board located in the northeast corner, or northwest corner of the intersection of Bowman Road and South China Lake Boulevard. Applicant, City Chamber of Commerce, Ridgecrest Chamber of Commerce. Staff report, please.
So this is for the electronic sign that's on the corner of Bowman and China Lake Boulevard. Originally, in July of 2005, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit to place that billboard in the city's right-of-way. So the Ridgecrest Chamber of Commerce has run this board with community messaging for many years. Several years ago, it was damaged, and so at this point, they're just coming back to us to replace it and actually upgrade it at this point. This is the site. This is what the proposed new sign would look like. So it's the same dimensions as the previous sign. It's just that previously the messaging electronic portion was in the smaller bottom, and now the whole sign will encompass that. The sign is 5.5 by 11 foot 3 inches, I believe. So they're using the same base. Basically, they're just updating and replacing that top portion there. So we have various findings we have to make in order to approve a conditional use for a billboard, as this is classified. And staff has determined that the project does meet these findings. To summarize some of those, billboards have to be located along the general commercial zoned portion, South China Lake Boulevard, which this is. The billboard cannot exceed a certain size, which is 20 feet in height by 10 feet. So this does not. It has to be they can't be located on the same side of China Lake Boulevard within 300 feet of each other. That doesn't happen. There will not have a direct light. So this is an electronic, so it is lit, but it's not projecting a light. It's internally lit. The display is freestanding, and the lowest point is over 11 feet off the ground. It's not a danger to the public health and safety. They did provide some backup information that I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of previously, and they do have the person that works particularly on the electronic signs, but they did provide some information that I did share with you guys about safety of these kinds of things, especially when you're having light or pictures, making sure that's not a danger to drivers, and they have shown it's not. And it's properly zoned for the use. We do have a couple of recommended conditions to add on it. In the past, they had a memorandum of understanding with the city, because it is the city's right-of-way. Now it turns out we're requiring a licensing agreement, which is basically the same, just a different kind of wording. So that would be a condition that we would ask placed on it, that they work through to get that done. Other than that, we are asking that the chamber would still be responsible for the ongoing maintenance, that they do an encroachment permit for when they do any repair, and that they follow all federal, state, local, and county regulations. So that concludes my presentation. They are here. Staff does recommend that the planning conditionally approve this.
Thank you. Commissioner comments or questions?
For how many years is the memorandum of understanding going to be? Is it annual basis renewable, or 5 years, 10 years? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not aware. That's going to be worked out with City Council. I believe the intent is that it will go to City Org, and then City Org will make a recommendation for approval to Council. So in the past, the details that were in that, I believe, were more along the lines of what kind of advertising and how much advertising. So it wasn't like a constant stream of advertising. They had to provide a certain percentage of community messaging. So I understand, like have not been involved in that, but I understand that is,
right? You were in the chamber at that time, no?
I was, well, not at that time when they put it in, but I am familiar with the electronic sign, yes. And they might know if they have discussed further what that licensing agreement will look like.
Would you like the applicant to come up?
Sure.
Would one of you come up and?
Yeah, I would clarify. I don't believe, in the past, that memorandum of understanding was for the life of the sign. So I don't think it would be something that the city would want to go back with them annually and review.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
why I
that
understood
makes
it as
sense.
well. It wasn't discussed when I spoke with the city with Ron Strand. So
Okay, any
Yes,
other
you-
commissioner comments?
I had a question about the 300-foot, that 300-foot, so it's number 4 on there that says it has to be 300 feet away from another billboard along the same street side. There are 2 vacant lots that we had actually discussed with the developer several years ago, if I remember. Is that going to stifle any sort of development to the north of that or advertisement for that by permitting this?
No, that would just be in terms of another billboard. So it wouldn't prevent
Okay.
any development. It's just that we wouldn't, like the billboards that are on the corner of, say, Raider and China Lake, you couldn't put another billboard 300 feet from that, on that side of the road.
Well, also, this is sitting within the city easement, and so
Right.
it's sitting further forward. So it wouldn't affect the development, but the idea is 300 feet is that if we put something closer, it may not be seen.
Okay. And my concern is that we are limiting what those folks that have those 2 parcels right in front of this on China Lake Boulevard, potentially what they could advertise. And it was just
They just wouldn't be able to have another billboard.
okay.
But like their real estate signs and stuff that they have, I don't think that we would classify that as a billboard.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Vanessa? Okay, then I will open this public hearing, public comment portion to the public, if there's any comment from the public. Any calls? Well, let's just give it a minute. Okay, then, we'll close the public comment portion of this public hearing and move on. Do I have or hear a motion in relationship to this? This is Resolution 0517, correct?
I make a motion to approve
Yes.
conditional use permit 2002.
there you go.
I will second.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman. Aye. 4 ayes, motion carries.
Thanks for coming.
Again.
And who's on the phone? Kelly, thanks for calling.
Yes.
We
Oh, you're
appreciate
very welcome.
we appreciate it much.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. You guys have a great night.
All right, thank
Good
you.
weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Moving on, discussion and other action items, ordinance update discussion of ordinance and chapter of the Ridgecrest Municipal Code as it relates to recreational vehicle park. Heather?
All right, so this is back to the discussion that we've had about the possibility of allowing RV parks in city limits. As we discussed before, we do not have any zones that allow a recreational vehicle park within the city. At the original meeting, when we discussed this, the direction from the commission was to look at what Kern County allowed so that we could talk about what,
Before you go on, I cited resolution 0517, which was the old one. And that's
Solomon corrected
Resolution
it.
2017.
Yes, Solomon corrected it in his.
Thank you. I didn't hear that, so I wanted to make sure if we had to do another vote.
No, you're good, Chairman.
All right.
So tonight, what we're going to do is talk about what Kern County did, and you guys can kind of explore where you would want a conditional use permit for an RV park if you choose to move forward with that. So I've got the zoning map, and I've kind of blown it up so you guys can see. So Kern County allows recreational vehicle parks in 3 zones. That consists of the industrial, the estate, and the commercial. So I have circled these 3 areas in our zoning map so you can kind of get an idea. Now, I want to show you as well that this is the ACUS map. So I have discussed with John from NAS about the impact that this would have if we were to allow it in industrial or that estate zone that is right there where the purple and the right there, yes. So they do not find that a compatible use. So we would recommend that the industrial not be allowed or the estate, at least in that portion. So I did want to clarify that. So that doesn't particularly work very well. So here is a blow up of this portion of town so you can kind of get an idea of what the zoning is. And again, in the top corner there with the purple and the gray, that's the estate and the industrial that is not compatible with, for the density of an RV park. So it's kind of up to you guys to decide what you think you might want to see this in. The rest of the estate, as you can see, is around the outskirts of town. A lot of this has larger homes, so it's probably not something that would be compatible. You know, if you're building a new tract right there, you might not want an RV park next door to your home.
Having said that, though, if it's incompatible to have an RV park, it's probably incompatible for additional housing with NAS.
Well, the density for these portions right here is not the same as you sticking 100 RV park trailers on, you know, an acre or 2
The same
acres.
amount of land.
Right.
Sure, okay.
Can you define those boundaries? I am struggling to see.
Can you see the,
She's showing here.
Yeah, but
right here? In
okay.
this area,
Right.
in this area?
But that area-
Because she's talking about, go back to the area one more.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So I flipped it, sorry, so that I
Okay.
could make it bigger.
So is that in your current road?
So in this
This.
one, that's Indian Kern Road.
Okay.
And then the straight across and then coming towards me, that's Chinley Boulevard.
Okay.
and then this is going out of town.
Yes, and that's,
This piece right here is the one that
Right.
Bertrand is looking at.
and I'm getting there, if you let me get
Oh.
to the,
Don't read ahead.
so, now, Bertrand, the property is R3. Now, if you look at where else R3 is, because if you say it's a conditional use for R3, then it's a conditional use for all of R3. There is a mechanism that I would recommend if you guys choose to move forward with that, and I would say that you guys choose to make, if you want R3 to accommodate Bertrand, then I would say that you make it R3 that's only on a major or a secondary arterial. So that would prevent a lot of traffic on an interior high-density residential area. So I do have the city attorney, Lloyd, on the phone, so if you have any questions in particular. And again, so what we're doing at this meeting is deciding if you guys want to allow a conditional use for an RV park, and if you do, what zones you think are open to that.
If I may, Chairman Cox, this is Lloyd.
Yes, go ahead.
Just to add on to what Heather is saying, that, this is just giving direction. This item is merely giving direction to staff
Right.
for, ways to potentially proceed. And some of the issues and concerns are, if it's allowed in a particular zone, well then, what other possible applicants may come forward wanting it elsewhere in the city in that zone. And another issue would be, if it's a conditional use permit, how could that be, could it be difficult to revoke it once someone has the conditional use permit? So, there's ways to deal with this, but and all of any concerns like that or others that the commission has would be helpful to staff so that we can try to come up with solutions to it.
So the question I would have for you is that if a conditional use is permitted and conditions are put on it, if they violate those conditions, is that not grounds for termination?
Okay, so yes, that's true. There's two ways to look at this. One is that, or let's say that there's two competing counter arguments. One is any land use entitlement that the city grants can be revoked, and violating conditions of approval is certainly grounds for revocation. That's why we have conditions, and that would be a consequence of violating them. The problem is that the holder of the entitlement has due process rights. And so that means that there would be notice and public hearings, and findings would have to be made. And, typically a minor violation would not be considered reasonable grounds for revoking an entitlement. So there would be a fight over that.
Okay.
Another way to look at it is that a conditional or any entitlement could have built into it that it's time limited by time. It could have limitations built into it that might actually strengthen the city's case if the city desired to terminate it.
So basically a review every 10 years?
Yeah. Right. I have seen that, and I gather you have as well. And that's a good idea. You could have a review every year even. And, that would put the burden on the applicant. You could put a condition that puts the burden on the applicant to demonstrate compliance with conditions, rather than having it be the burden on the city to gather the evidence to find violations.
So the other question that I have, if we, and the concern I have, kind of follow me through this, we heard a case not long ago for a general commercial, and they wanted to put a hotel there over on Inyakern Road, and it was incompatible with the other structures that were there. Although it met the general commercial requirements, it was denied. My concern is if we turn around and say we are going to allow these only in R3 or in commercial or industrial or whatever it is, that we're limiting or we're opening Pandora's box versus taking an individual property and looking at it on the individual merit. For example, this particular case that's in front of us, it is an R3 and it is on the outskirts of town. There is no building construction around it. And, but yet if we say we're going to authorize it for all R3s, that opens us up for interpretation, because that's exactly what they did on this, what did they call it? They didn't call it a hotel, but it was basically a hotel. What was it? Transient home or whatever. And so I don't want to leave us open for interpretation, and I don't want this commission or council or the next commission or council be saddled with a decision that they may regret, versus taking each applicant and saying we would consider a conditional use on this particular piece of property under these conditions. So what are your thoughts to that?
Okay, so this is Lloyd again.
Right.
So this is very helpful, because this is the kind of discussion that Heather and I were hoping for this meeting, to give staff things to think about, to build into an ordinance to bring back to you. So first, keep in mind, I'll give you, I had two thoughts while you were talking. One was a broad allowance and one was a narrow one. So broadly, all CUPs have to make a finding of some, I forget the exact wording, but it's some finding of compatibility.
Right.
So Heather, if you want to correct me and quote the actual language, but generally conditional use permits require demonstrating that the site and the use is compatible with surrounding uses. So that's already in the findings for a conditional use permit. So if you think that that's enough to protect the city, to distinguish one property from another property, then you could just leave it at that and have it require a CUP.
Uh-huh.
If you could also ask for a much more narrow allowance, where the use would be allowed upon making certain findings, and we can tailor those findings to this use. And it could be that it's on the edge of town, or that I don't know, whatever you think would be appropriate. Keep in mind that conditions can change. So, you can't say with empty lots on all sides, because they can be developed.
Well, and I would agree. I think it's more like having the opportunity, as the commission has on some of the things that they've looked at before, to look at this particular piece of property and say, today, there is nothing around it. It would not interfere with anything. It wouldn't create a problem for the community. But under these conditions, whether it's a limited use or review every 5 years, I think a review every year might be a little bit, unless there are extreme violations. And so I'm wondering if we can take the opportunity, because zoning can be changed. We can have an R3 and somebody asks for it to be general commercial, and we could consider it. So for me to just look at it as we're going to automatically authorize in an R3, I don't really care for that. I would really rather the commission or any future commission have the opportunity to look at each parcel or each piece individually and say, as you were talking about, it's not compatible there, and have the opportunity to turn it down.
And possibly revoke it if the neighborhood changes?
Yes, I would think so, because 20 years from now, that may be fully developed into homes, and it is then completely incompatible.
And there is law that says that that I've read cases where that is supportable, where the use that was considered a nuisance, their defense was, well, we were here first, and so the residential neighborhood, they came knowing that we were a particularly noxious use of land. It happened to be a chicken farm, and the court said, you know what, the world changes, and it's no longer compatible to have a chicken farm there.
Kind of like an airport?
Right.
Commissioners, any other questions? That's my thoughts. George is looking for an opportunity, and I truthfully hate, personally, it's just a personal thing, hate to saddle this commission or the next commission or the following commissions with a decision that we might make that says we're going to allow them in industrial or R3 or general commercial. I would rather a commission and the council have an opportunity to look at each individual one, and as Lloyd has pointed out, put conditions on it, and if the developer doesn't want to agree with the conditions, then that's their choice. But I agree that demographics will change, and we ought not to saddle ourselves with a lifetime conditional use permit.
So just so I understand, you're saying that...
Let Lloyd know who's talking.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Ferris. That all R3 is not what you're discussing. You're saying it could be anywhere in residential as long as it's got a conditional use permit.
Well, I think we would comply similar to the county, and so that's what Heather showed. Go back to this to the sign that you had up here with the circles on it, Heather. Okay, which is industrial, light commercial, and then R3 isn't even mentioned. So the county mentions these, but if you'll notice on this one right here, okay, this borders right up to residential. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have commercial that butts right up against residential, but I'm saying rather than write an ordinance that says we will consider these in industrial only, or commercial only, or R3 only, I would rather see it done on a case-by-case basis with conditions of approval, as well as the penalties if it's violated, and they know that it's not a lifetime thing. So if they put the infrastructure in, it may need to change 20 years from now. But to just...
If I may...
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Lloyd. Since you're talking now about zones, then that is something to think about, is just in terms of how to structure this ordinance. So currently, the way the zoning code is structured is every zone has a list of uses that are permitted and then uses that are permitted with a conditional use permit. So, like, for example, a school could be in a residential zone with a conditional use permit. So if the Planning Commission does not want to limit it to a particular zone, then we would probably be talking about an ordinance that adds it as a conditional use in as many zones as you're contemplating. So it would be an addition to each of those sections of the zoning code for whichever zones you're contemplating.
Lloyd, this is Commissioner Ferris, and that was kind of my concern, that if we don't restrict it to a certain zone, then we're sort of creating a lot more legwork and headache, because now every single residential area has to be not rezoned, but at least added to that, correct?
It would be, we're talking about the number of portions of the zoning code. So if you want it in, let's say if you want it in any possible zone, any zone with a conditional use permit, then we would just add the list, add to the list of conditional uses for each of those zones. We would add RV park. And if we had other restrictions that we were thinking of, like for the size of the property or something like that, then we might put that, we might have to put that there as well. So I guess the direction that we're looking for is, given that the planning commission wants the city to have the ability to determine whether it's compatible and put restrictive conditions on it. Given that, do you want to limit it to any particular zones, or do you want it to be allowed potentially in any zone?
So how about we do it in reverse? Instead of naming the zones that it'd be compatible in, how about if we say, we, in this conditional use, we don't want it in an R1, R2, or general commercial. So general commercial would be all the way down China Lake Boulevard. R1, R2 would be most of your residential. And then that would leave us what? Light industrial and, I can't read it small enough here, Heather. The brown is what?
That would leave light industrial, which isn't compatible just for the location of it. It would leave all estate.
So what I'm asking is if we turned around and if it was something that we would consider a conditional use permit, can we exclude certain zones and leave the rest of them open for discussion?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes, you can define.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, yeah, we're talking about we're coming up with a list of zones, and whether you want to describe that as all zones except certain ones, or whether you want to describe it as these certain ones, either way, we're coming up with a list of zones that they could potentially be approved in.
Well, and personally, I'd rather exclude these particular zones because, as you know, as time goes forward, zoning can change.
Right.
And so it may not be compatible today and it may be tomorrow or vice versa. And so if we exclude it for these, then they can never encroach on those types of zoning. And if the city decides to change a commercial to residential, R1, R2, and they do that, then it becomes incompatible for somebody to consider doing something like this. That would just be my suggestion. Commissioners?
Yeah, I agree with that. And we can also add saying that other zones as and when needed, something like that, so that we have an open dialogue whenever we need to do something.
Well, I think if we eliminate some zoning, then it leaves it open for them to apply for a conditional use permit. Doesn't mean that they'll be granted one. Because under those conditional use permits, there would also be conditions that they would have to meet. And they may not want to meet those, as far as the requirements for the city. So, Lloyd, can we kind of instruct staff that way? Because I think at least the commission seems to be in general consensus that, if we look at R1, R2, general commercial, would just be excluded. When we look at industrial or estate, things like that, I think if we just eliminate those three, unless the commission wants to add another one, have staff take a look at that, and then it would run across as a conditional use with conditions, and that way it could be viewed individually with the conditions that the city is going to put on them pending the location that they're at. I just want to make sure that we as a commission or a council are not saddling the next commission and the council with something that they don't want to live with, and still have the agency to make a decision and look at the city as a whole and the general plan and say this is compatible or it's not. Lloyd?
And that is the consideration that you stated it exactly right, that in terms of saddling future planning commissions, for a planning commission to deny it once it's in the zoning code, that planning commission would have to make the findings to support the denial. They would have to be that it is the particular site is incompatible with surrounding uses and can't be conditioned to address those issues.
Right.
And whatever the other findings are for a conditional use permit, because if it can't just be we don't want this in the city. That would probably not fly as a sufficient finding to support a denial.
Thank you. Heather, are we opening this to public, this discussion?
We are, but I want to clarify. So you're saying, you're thinking excluding R1, R2, general commercial, I'm assuming you also mean service commercial, and professional office,
Yes.
which that would leave R4, R3, estate 1 and 2, and the mobile home areas.
Yes.
So those are the ones that you think are
Commission?
compatible?
Yeah, that's,
I think that's where we're at as a commission, and then that way, we just look at it on a case-by-case basis. I don't want Lloyd or the city or the future city councils to be saddled with a resolution that says, well, I met the conditions under this zoning. I think we need to
Well,
look
that's
at it
always
because
what a
the
conditional use permit
demographics
would
can
be.
change.
Yeah, no, well, that's always what a conditional use permit would be, but I'm asking clearly what zones are we talking about so that Lloyd and I can move forward. And so that's why I'm just trying to make sure that
You hit it right.
Great.
Lloyd, is that acceptable to you?
It is.
Okay, so, and then I think at some point, we would probably want to discuss conditions.
Yes, and I did make a list of the things that were discussed, so we can work through
Okay, that way
all of the
staff can
things.
kind
Yeah,
of discuss them.
craft some things, and we can further talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
And we can take public comment, but I don't know that we have any.
Do we have anybody on the line that would like to talk to us? Okay. Okay, Lloyd, I think we've got some direction here. I appreciate your time very, very much.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, this is Lauren Culp.
Hi, Lauren.
City engineer. I have a question. Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On conditioning projects, generally, I've been told that you need an enabling ordinance that would allow you to specify certain improvements to an improvement project or to a development project. And with this as being a new type of land use, would it be necessary to develop an enabling ordinance that had more specifics and criteria of how or what infrastructure improvements would be required for
I
this
think
type of land use development?
I think it'd probably be completely appropriate, and I think if we could, is maybe have you or Bart or the staff at some point come with a list of conditions that we could put together as a recommendation for adding this as an ordinance in the aspect of if we're going to allow an RV park, okay, under a conditional use permit, it has to meet this ordinance's conditions. So, yeah, I think a conditioning ordinance would probably be completely appropriate.
Yeah,
Commission?
it's almost like a design review, something that would meet the expectations of the community in terms of what the appearance would be and what the infrastructure would be for the RV park, for that land use. I can see that there'd be a wide range of improvements that a developer of an RV park may desire, so there'd be quite a variation there in which they would want to construct as a part of their RV park. it may not meet the expectations of the public or the elected officials or even you as a commission, and the appearance and the amount of improvements that would be acceptable for that type of land use.
Right. Well, kind of a roadmap. For example, the RV park would have to have a block wall or fencing. RV park would have to have landscaping and, certain fire conditions for travel in and out, ingress, regress, so on and so forth type things. I think we could put that together. Commission?
I do have a question. What income does the city get out of this project?
You mean other than developing a piece of land and,
That's it,
and the taxes,
Taxes.
according to?
Okay.
Probably no different than any other developer that's building homes and that. So they own a piece of property, they'd like to use it, and under this circumstance, they'd like to develop this, and it's either compatible or not.
There may be
You know,
a
no
transient
different than if
tax.
Boeing wanted to come in and put in a 200,000 square foot building.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it would, and support the base.
I'm guessing there's a transient tax too, right?
I
On
would
anything
think
less
that the
than 30
city would
days?
want to look at how to enforce that, yes,
Okay.
because it's a transient stay. If
Yeah.
hotel stays have to pay it, I think that we would want to pursue that as well.
Yeah, the reason I asked is if you are
Yeah.
getting some income, why can't we do this? So,
Correct.
Well, and there's so many, part of the conditions too, so many of the RV parks, it's when I was in the hospital, I stayed in an RV park down at Loma Linda, and I couldn't stay any longer than 3 months.
Right, 90 days.
Without special permission or conditions or, so on and so forth. And so there was kind of some wiggle room, but, there was conditions. You leave and come right back, but, and especially if we've got, George is looking at it for the construction on the base, that there's going to be people that are going to bring their RVs and need a place to stay. And we want them to have sanitation, we want them to have water, we want them to have trash pickup, we want them to have all these kinds of things so that we just don't end up with a homeless camp out here that somebody has to pick up. And so, yeah, I think those are the conditions that we're talking about, but I think an enabling ordinance.
I believe more of what Lauren is talking about is, are we talking about paving? And for Lauren to be able to have an ordinance that would enable him to condition those types of things. Planning, we already have, in the general plan, we already have standards that say you have to put a block wall around, stuff like that, along with housing. So those things are already built in it, but I believe that Lauren is looking at how we condition the internal use of that, Is it going to be paved? And what's going to allow him to make those kinds of things?
Curb, gutter, sidewalk.
Well, absolutely, yes.
So, and this particular site, I'm concerned about flood control too. Because the water tends to head that direction, and at one point George had said he wanted to put big earth berms around it so the water wouldn't come in, and I don't find that aesthetically pleasing. Block wall would do some of that, but as far as a diversion of floodwaters. But, I assume the city has an elevation for curb, gutter, and sidewalk. That land is not developed out there, and so are we going to require him to put, a section of asphalt out there, and that's it? When they do large pieces of subdivision, we generally have them pave half the street. And I think for this kind of use, that might be the straw that broke the camel's back. It wouldn't be justified, as far as financially. But curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and having a block wall, and having the RV park I was down there, they had, it was gated. And when you checked in, you were given a clicker, and it was gated in and out, so it wasn't just open for anybody to come and go. And so some of those kinds of conditions can be put there to where, one, they feel secure, they're all the way out there, but it also is pleasant. You know, it's something that's an addition to the city. So we've got some things that we can work on, right?
Yes.
Any other direction the commission would like to give her? If not, anything else as far as committee meetings or anything? We don't have ours till next week. So, okay, well, if that's the case, at 5:40.
I do have a question, though.
Yes, sir.
Update. Update on temporary employee camps. Is anything moving on that, or do you know anything, Heather? Because we rushed it and we gave permission to city manager to do things because we are short of time, so.
You see that look on her face? It says, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, let's not talk about it.
There is no update now.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, I'm just teasing you, right? Any other projects that we know about? Is Wiener Schnitzel moving, or is it Wiener Schnitzel? No, it's
there's Arby's.
Arby's. Is it moving forward or not?
It was.
Okay.
I believe
Moving along, I got the same
Yeah.
look too.
the last I heard, they had hired another general contractor to restart the project, and that's where it's at.
Okay.
And it looked like they were moving for a while, but I haven't seen anything. But that could just be they're waiting for something.
So I see Holiday Inn Express is moving along. The other hotel, are they still in plan check?
They are, yes. Yes. The Town Place Suites, they're still in plan check. So I would suspect it's moving along. Obviously, you see the Holiday Inn progress. Panda Express, they're working with Walmart still, I believe, on their property. But so they're still moving forward. We do have a indoor self-storage going into the old Walmart. So it'll be entirely indoor.
That's nice, at least finally.
Yeah.
So a climate control.
Yeah. So that's going in there. I don't know what, I think that's it.
I don't know how they will do that. So they're going
Yeah,
to
we
divide
need one of
everything
those.
into small
Well, and we've
units.
talked to the school district. They're looking at submitting for funding for a new Richmond. So we've talked to them. The new Richmond that they're proposing would be on Gateway and Ridgecrest Boulevard, so right with the other two schools. So we've talked to them. That's about it.
Gateway and Ridgecrest Boulevard.
Right. So in that, kind of in the block of Richmond Road at the back gate, Ridgecrest Boulevard and Gateway.
Okay, so the vacant land right across from Gateway Elementary.
No. Right across from, I don't even know what's there
BLM?
anymore. No. Ridgecrest Boulevard. So,
Minute shop.
okay, Minute Shop. I don't know. I don't go down there. Used to be, I think Sears was down there at one point. Maybe a long time ago. What? Medical place? There's a physical therapist. Yes.
I know
So
where
across
that
from It's
commercial
Navy
building is.
property. So, yeah,
Okay.
not city property or city land.
And nothing else going on other than that we've got coming up?
Now, we've had some prospective applicants that were still in the pre-submittal, talking to some people. We have someone who's interested in building a small arrangement of condos. I think it's like 5 or 6 units. So we've completed a pre-application meeting with them. I think that's about it.
Lauren, are you still on the line?
Yes, Commissioner.
So what was the end outcome? Bart had attended a meeting. The final outcome of what was going to be required in the Roland subdivision as far as water detention.
have not had an opportunity to speak to Bard to any depth or degree on what his decision has been made there. I'd be happy to discuss that with him and be able to report to you at the Infrastructure Committee meeting.
That'd be fine, because one of the concerns the commission had is the commission had approved a water detention basin in one of the lots, and somebody decided to change that, but it never came back to the Planning Commission for approval, and they were going to put detention on each and every lot, and Rollins were petitioning to relieve them of that, and the commission was not excited about that. So I don't know if we went back to the original single lot water detention or what the plan was. But anyway, it was a discussion that we had, but we have not heard what the final outcome was.
Yes, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I'll be discussing that topic with Bard tomorrow. Well, it'll actually have to be next week at Tuesday. I'll get with him and get an update on what his decision was.
Okay, that'd be terrific. Anything else from the commission? If not, we will end at 5:56.